15 actresses who shockingly went from Hollywood to prison. They once walked red carpets under flashing cameras and later stood before judges under fluorescent courtroom lights. For these actresses, the fall wasn't just public, it was permanent. Behind the glamour were secrets, pressure, ego, and decisions that shattered legacies built over decades. Some targeted the vulnerable, some spiraled under fame. Others crossed lines so dark, redemption may never come. In Hollywood, we celebrate comebacks. But what happens when the damage can't be rewritten by a new role? Tonight, we uncover the truth behind the headlines. Stay with legends of black fame and tell us, can a legacy survive prison? Allison Mack, 43 years old. When federal agents began unraveling the secretive inner circle of legacies and them, few expected the name of a former television star to surface at the center of it. Yet Allison Mack was not a peripheral follower. Prosecutors described her as a trusted lieutenant within the organization's covert subgroup known as DOS, a master and slave structure that operated beneath the surface of what was publicly marketed as a self-improvement company. What made the story so unsettling wasn't just her involvement, but the power she allegedly exercised over other women. Court documents revealed that she admitted to recruiting members into DOS, knowing they would be required to provide damaging collateral, personal secrets, explicit images, or financial information as leverage to ensure obedience. Some recruits were branded with a symbol later revealed to contain the initials of NX1 5M leader Keith Raniere. Mack ultimately pled guilty in 2019 to racketeering conspiracy and racketeering charges, acknowledging her role in coercion tied to the group's activities. In 2021, she was sentenced to 3 years in federal prison and ordered to pay a $20,000 fine. She reported to a federal facility in California and was released in July 2023 after serving her sentence. But the legal record only tells part of the story. What lingers is the psychological dimension, how a person once associated with scripted heroism became entangled in an organization built on manipulation. Former members described an atmosphere of gradual indoctrination seminars, affirmations, escalating commitments. By the time the darker elements emerged, loyalty had already been cemented. Was she a calculating recruiter or someone who surrendered her judgment to a charismatic authority figure? In court, Mack expressed remorse, stating she had devoted herself to Raniere with blind faith. The judge acknowledged her cooperation with investigators, but also emphasized the harm done to victims who were pressured, controlled, and exploited. For many observers, that tension defines her legacy, accountability alongside contrition. Since her release, Mack has kept a low public profile. There have been reports of her pursuing studies related to social work, though she has not returned to acting in any major capacity. The silence contrasts sharply with the headlines that once surrounded her. Her story resonates not because it is sensational, but because it disrupts assumptions. We tend to believe that those who portray strength and kindness on screen reflect something similar in real life. Yet real life is not scripted, and influence can operate quietly, almost invisibly. Allison Mack's fall was not about one dramatic moment. It was about incremental choices, misplaced devotion, and the consequences that followed when illusion met reality. Shannon Richardson, 48 years old. In May 2013, Shannon Richardson stepped into a story that would move far beyond minor television credits and into the realm of federal criminal history. Letters addressed to then-President Barack Obama and New York City Mayor Michael Bloomberg were intercepted after testing positive for ricin, a highly toxic biological agent derived from castor beans. The discovery triggered an immediate federal investigation involving the FBI and hazardous materials teams. What made the case even more startling was Richardson's first move. She contacted authorities claiming her estranged husband had sent the letters and was attempting to frame her. At first glance, it appeared to be a domestic dispute tangled in something much larger. But digital forensic evidence told another story. Investigators traced internet searches about ricin production and mailing methods back to her. Materials linked to the toxin were also recovered. Faced with mounting proof, Richardson eventually admitted she was responsible. In December 2014, she was sentenced to 18 years in federal prison after pleading guilty to possession of a biological toxin. Prosecutors described the act as deliberate and premeditated. At the time of her arrest, she was pregnant, a detail that intensified public reaction and media scrutiny. Why would someone escalate a personal conflict into a federal terror case? The courtroom offered no dramatic revelations of political motive. Instead, it exposed calculated deception and a failed attempt to redirect blame. The judge emphasized the seriousness of threatening national leaders and the potential harm such actions could cause. Richardson's sentence reflected that gravity. As of early 2026, she remains incarcerated in a federal facility with a projected release date in late 2028. Unlike celebrity scandals driven by substance abuse or financial fraud, this case entered the territory of national security, and the consequences were correspondingly severe. There was no comeback tour, no public redemption arc, no carefully managed media strategy. Just a prison term measured in years, not months. The case remains a stark reminder that some decisions carry consequences far beyond personal reputation. In Richardson's case, a single act reshaped everything. Skylar Deleon, 46 years old. In 2004, Skylar Deleon approached Thomas and Jackie Hawkes under the pretense of purchasing their yacht in Newport Beach, California. The couple retired and, seeking to sell their vessel, agreed to a test sale. What followed was not negotiation, but a carefully planned ambush. Prosecutors later demonstrated that Deleon and accomplices overpowered the Hawks, forced them to sign over ownership documents, bound them to an anchor, and threw them alive into the Pacific Ocean. Their bodies were never recovered. The crime was motivated by financial gain, access to the yacht and associated funds, but the brutality stunned even seasoned investigators. During the 2009 trial, jurors heard testimony outlining the premeditated nature of the killings and evidence linking Deleon to an additional homicide. Convicted of 3 counts of first-degree murder, Deleon was sentenced to death. The courtroom atmosphere reflected the magnitude of the crime, calculated, profit-driven, and merciless. How does someone shift from paperwork to murder without hesitation? California has maintained a moratorium on executions since 2019, meaning Deleon remains on death row rather than facing immediate execution. While incarcerated, Deleon came out as transgender and was later transferred to a women's correctional facility under California Department of Corrections policy. Unlike cases involving fraud or probation violations, this crime permanently ended lives. There was no ambiguity in motive presented at trial, no short sentence, no path toward early release. The verdict carried the most severe penalty available under state law. The Hawkes family endured years of uncertainty before justice was delivered in court. Even without recovered bodies, the evidence convinced a jury beyond reasonable doubt. The Pacific may have concealed physical traces, but testimony, documentation, and financial records filled in the gaps. This case did not unfold as a reckless mistake or a moment of lost control. It was methodical, it was planned, and its consequences are designed to last a lifetime. Jen Shah, 52 years old. For years, Jen Shah projected excess on the Real Housewives of Salt Lake City, designer labels, private assistants, lavish parties. Then, in March 2021, federal agents arrested her in connection with a nationwide telemarketing scheme that targeted thousands of victims, many of them elderly. According to court filings, the operation sold so-called business services that delivered little or no value, extracting money from vulnerable people across multiple states. At first, Shah publicly declared her innocence. Cameras captured her, insisting she would fight the charges. But as evidence mounted, including encrypted communications and cooperating witnesses, she changed course. In July 2022, she pled guilty to conspiracy to commit wire fraud. Prosecutors detailed how the scheme operated for years, and generated significant profits. In January 2023, she was sentenced to 6.5 years in federal prison and ordered to forfeit more than $6 million, along with restitution to victims. How does someone build a television persona around power and influence while running a system that quietly drains the life savings of strangers? In February 2023, Shah reported to a federal prison camp in Texas. The sentence carried weight beyond confinement. It dismantled a public identity constructed around control. Federal judges emphasized that the crimes were not impulsive, but sustained and deliberate. Victim impact statements described retirees losing retirement funds and small business owners drained by false promises. While in custody, Shah issued public apologies acknowledging harm done. Court records show her projected release date has been reduced from the original term due to standard federal time credits, though she remains incarcerated as of early 2026. Unlike brief jail stints tied to reckless behavior, this case centered on calculated financial exploitation. Reality television thrives on drama, but this was not scripted conflict. It was a federal conviction, backed by documented evidence and financial records. The designer wardrobe, the glam squads, the extravagant lifestyle, all of it now sits in sharp contrast to prison regulations and restitution payments. Jen Shah's case underscores a sobering reality. Federal fraud investigations move slowly, but once they conclude, the consequences are decisive. Fame amplified her visibility. It did not shield her from accountability. Amy Locane, 54 years old. In June 2010, Amy Locane was driving in Montgomery Township, New Jersey, when her vehicle collided with another car, killing 60-year-old Helene Seaman. Authorities determined that Locane's blood alcohol level was approximately 3 times the legal limit at the time of the crash. The tragedy immediately shifted the narrative from celebrity recognition to criminal prosecution. Locane was convicted in 2013 of vehicular homicide and assault by auto. Initially sentenced to 3 years in prison, she was released in 2015. However, prosecutors appealed, arguing the sentence was too lenient under New Jersey law. In a rare move, appellate courts agreed that sentencing errors had occurred. The case returned to court multiple times over several years, with judges revisiting the punishment to ensure compliance with statutory guidelines. In 2020, Locane was resentenced and ordered back to prison. She ultimately served additional time and was released again in December 2024. The prolonged legal process drew attention not only because of her past acting career, but because it illustrated how sentencing disputes can extend far beyond the original verdict. What weighs heavier, the public scrutiny or the irreversible loss endured by a victim's family? Throughout the proceedings, the Seaman family consistently advocated for what they believed was a fair sentence. Court hearings revisited the impact of the crash, emphasizing accountability rather than celebrity status. Judges acknowledged that while Locane had no intent to kill, the level of intoxication constituted reckless disregard for life. Unlike financial fraud or federal conspiracy cases, this tragedy centered on a fatal decision made behind the wheel. There were no complex financial trails or hidden organizations, only a documented blood alcohol level, crash reconstruction evidence, and a grieving family. Since her release, Locane has maintained a low public profile. The legal chapter may be closed, but the consequences remain permanent for those affected. Her case stands as a stark reminder that impaired driving carries consequences, measured not only in prison terms, but in lives altered forever. Loughlin, 61 years old. For decades, Loughlin was associated with wholesome television and carefully managed public grace. Then in March 2019, federal prosecutors unveiled Operation Varsity Blues, a sweeping investigation into a nationwide college admissions scheme. Court documents allege that Loughlin and her husband paid $500,000 to secure admission for their two daughters to the University of Southern California by presenting them as fake rowing recruits. The evidence was specific and documented staged photographs on rowing machines, falsified athletic profiles, and payments routed through consultant William Rick Singer's foundation. At first, Loughlin fought the charges, maintaining her innocence as public criticism intensified. But in May 2020, she reversed course, pleading guilty to conspiracy to commit wire and mail fraud. In August 2020, a federal judge sentenced her to 2 months in prison, a $150,000 fine, and 100 hours of community service. She reported to a federal correctional institution in California and was released in December 2020 after serving her sentence. What happens when the pursuit of advantage crosses into criminal territory? Prosecutors argued that the scheme undermined fairness in the admissions process, disadvantaging qualified students who relied on merit. The case resonated deeply with American families navigating rising tuition costs and competitive college entry. Loughlin's decision to initially contest the charges, followed by her eventual plea, shaped public perception as much as the crime itself. Since her release, she has gradually returned to television work, though her reputation remains permanently altered. Unlike violent crimes or long federal sentences, her time behind bars was brief, but the damage to a carefully constructed image was not. The case became a symbol of privilege pressure and the length some parents will go to secure opportunity. Her prison term lasted 60 days. The cultural debate it sparked lasted far longer. Felicity Huffman, 63 years old. When federal indictments were unsealed in 2019, Felicity Huffman was among those charged in the same college admissions conspiracy. Prosecutors alleged that she paid $15,000 to have a proctor secretly correct answers on her daughter's SAT exam. Unlike some defendants, Huffman moved quickly. Within weeks, she publicly accepted responsibility, issuing a written apology, acknowledging that her actions were wrong. In May 2019, she pled guilty to conspiracy to commit mail fraud and honest services mail fraud. During sentencing, in September 2019, a federal judge imposed a 14-day prison term, 1 year of supervised release, 250 hours of community service, and a $30,000 fine. Huffman ultimately served 11 days at a federal facility in California. Why did one parent respond with immediate admission while others resisted? Prosecutors noted that while her payment was significantly smaller than other sums in the broader scheme, it still represented a deliberate attempt to manipulate standardized testing. In court, Huffman expressed remorse directly to the judge, stating that her daughter had no knowledge of the deception. Her relatively short sentence reflected the court's consideration of her early cooperation and lack of prior criminal history. Still, the conviction placed her in federal custody, an outcome that reshaped public perception of an actress long associated with dramatic roles rather than criminal proceedings. In the years following her release, Huffman gradually resumed professional work, including stage performances. The legal consequences were brief compared to others in the scandal, yet the episode remains a permanent part of her record. Unlike sensational criminal cases, this one unfolded through emails, invoices, and standardized test answer sheets. It did not involve violence or vast sums of money, but it struck a nerve in a nation already debating fairness, access, and accountability. Lindsay Lohan, 39 years old. Between 2007 and 2012, Lindsay Lohan was photographed by police 6 separate times, each image capturing a different chapter of a very public unraveling. The charges were not dramatic conspiracies or financial schemes. They were DUIs, probation violations, and court non-compliance. But in the late 2000s, under relentless tabloid surveillance, each arrest felt amplified, dissected in real time by a culture obsessed with celebrity collapse. Her first major legal trouble began in May 2007 with a DUI arrest in Beverly Hills. 2 months later, she was arrested again, this time for DUI and possession of cocaine. She entered a plea agreement that included jail time and probation. Over the next several years, missed court dates and failed probation requirements triggered additional hearings and short jail stays. In 2010, after violating probation tied to earlier DUI convictions, a judge sentenced her to 90 days in jail. Due to overcrowding, she served approximately 14 days. Later that year, another probation violation resulted in additional time, though again shortened. House arrest followed. Courtrooms replaced film sets. Headlines replaced scripts. When does a pattern stop being a mistake and start becoming a warning sign? Unlike calculated fraud cases, Lohan's legal history reflected instability rather than organized criminal intent. Judges repeatedly emphasized the importance of compliance and rehabilitation. Court transcripts show increasing frustration as probation terms were broken. Yet they also reveal efforts to balance punishment with treatment options. By 2012, her legal situation stabilized. Over the following decade, Lohan gradually stepped away from the chaos that defined her 20s. While her career stalled during those turbulent years, she avoided lengthy incarceration. Her story is less about a single crime and more about a prolonged spiral conducted under the glare of a media machine that thrived on spectacle. 6 mugshots, multiple court appearances, short jail sentences. The record is public and documented. What remains debated is not what happened, but how much of it was personal failure versus public pressure magnified beyond proportion. Michelle Rodriguez, 47 years old. Michelle Rodriguez built a screen persona defined by defiance, fierce, independent, untamed. In the mid-2000s, real-life headlines began echoing that intensity. In 2005, she was arrested in Hawaii for DUI, while filming the television series Lost. She later pled guilty and paid fines. But the legal troubles did not end there. In 2007, Rodriguez faced additional charges in California related to probation violations stemming from prior DUI convictions. A judge determined she had failed to comply with court-ordered alcohol education programs. That year, she was sentenced to 180 days in jail. Because of jail overcrowding policies in Los Angeles County, she served only 18 days. The sentence was brief. The warning was not. Court records show that judges treated the violations seriously, emphasizing public safety and accountability. Driving under the influence, unlike financial fraud, carries immediate risk to others on the road. The case did not involve elaborate schemes or hidden transactions. It involved impaired driving and repeated non-compliance. What happens when the tough persona extends beyond the screen? Rodriguez later acknowledged in interviews that fame and sudden success had distorted her judgment. The jail time, though short, became a turning point. Unlike defendants who faced multi-year federal sentences, her legal consequences were measured in weeks. Yet they marked a moment of reckoning. After 2007, her legal troubles subsided. She returned to major film franchises, including the Fast and Furious series, without further high-profile arrests. The pattern that defined her mid-20s did not repeat in the same way. Her case illustrates a different category of celebrity incarceration, not calculated criminal enterprise, not violent crime, but reckless behavior corrected through the court system. The record is clear: arrests, probation violations, 18 days served. For Rodriguez, the courtroom chapter was sharp but brief. A collision between image and responsibility resolved before it became something far worse. Paris Hilton, 45 years old. In 2007, Paris Hilton was already one of the most photographed women in America, a reality television star, business heiress, and tabloid fixture. But in May of that year, a Los Angeles judge sentenced her to 45 days in jail for violating probation related to a prior reckless driving conviction involving alcohol. The violation stemmed from driving with a suspended license, despite clear court orders. At first, the sentence shocked many observers. 45 days felt severe for what appeared to be a probation matter. Yet the court emphasized that she had signed documents acknowledging her license suspension. When she entered the Century Regional Detention Facility in Linwood, California, the media frenzy was unprecedented. Helicopters circled the jail. Cameras waited outside the gates. Reporters analyzed every development. Then came another twist. After only 3 days behind bars, Hilton was released to home confinement due to reported medical issues. Public reaction was swift and critical. Prosecutors argued that the release was improper. The judge ordered her back to jail, stating that no one should receive special treatment because of fame. Ultimately, Hilton served 23 days before being released in June 2007. Was this just a spectacle, or both? The case became symbolic of a larger debate whether celebrity status softens legal consequences or intensifies scrutiny. Hilton later described the experience as traumatic, citing anxiety and isolation. Over time, she pivoted toward advocacy, speaking publicly about alleged abuse she experienced in youth residential treatment programs, an issue separate from her criminal case, but one she has actively campaigned to reform. Her jail term was brief. The cultural moment was not. In 2007, her incarceration dominated headlines in a way few probation cases ever have. The sentence did not involve violence or fraud, but it exposed the tension between privilege and accountability in full public view. Lil Kim, 51 years old. In 2005, Lil Kim faced federal charges not for violence itself, but for lying about it. The case stemmed from a 2001 shooting outside a New York City radio station involving members of her entourage. Surveillance footage later contradicted her testimony before a federal grand jury, where she claimed she did not know who was present at the scene. Prosecutors charged her with perjury and conspiracy for knowingly providing false statements. The trial drew intense media attention. At its core, the question was simple: did she lie to protect associates? And in March 2005, a jury found her guilty. That September, a federal judge sentenced her to 1 year and 1 day in prison, a term structured to allow eligibility for good behavior reductions. She ultimately served approximately 10 months at a federal detention center in Philadelphia before being released in 2006. Why risk prison to shield others from prosecution? The court emphasized that perjury undermines the justice system itself. The underlying shooting case mattered, but so did the integrity of sworn testimony. During sentencing, the judge noted that fame did not excuse dishonesty under oath. While incarcerated, Lil Kim maintained contact with fans and famously released her album, The Naked Truth, which debuted during her sentence and later went platinum. Unlike many defendants whose careers collapse after conviction, she re-emerged into the music industry, though not without lasting impact from the case. Her prison term was not the result of financial schemes or impaired driving. It was about testimony, about the decision to remain silent or alter the truth. The federal system responded decisively. Nearly a year in prison, a conviction for perjury, and a permanent entry in the public record that no performance could rewrite. Brat, 51 years old. In October 2007, Brat-born Shawntae Harris was involved in an altercation at an Atlanta nightclub that escalated far beyond a verbal dispute. According to court records, a confrontation with a hostess turned violent when Brat struck the woman in the face with a rum bottle, causing serious facial injuries and permanent scarring. Surveillance footage and witness testimony played a central role in the case. In 2008, she pled guilty to aggravated assault. The court sentenced her to 3 years in prison, followed by 7 years of probation and 200 hours of community service. She served her time at a Georgia state facility and was released in 2011. The criminal case was only part of the fallout. In 2014, a civil jury awarded the victim more than $6 million in damages. The financial burden later led Brat to file for bankruptcy protection. The consequences were not confined to a prison sentence. They extended into long-term financial and professional strain. What begins as a moment of anger, can it undo decades of work? Unlike cases involving fraud or federal conspiracy, this was a crime of direct physical violence. The courtroom focused on accountability and restitution, not public image. Judges emphasized that celebrity status did not mitigate the harm inflicted. After her release, Brat gradually rebuilt her presence in entertainment, transitioning into radio and television appearances. Over time, she also became more open about her personal life, publicly coming out in 2020. Yet the 2007 assault remains a permanent part of her legal record. 3 years in prison, a multi-million-dollar civil judgment, a career interrupted at its peak. The incident serves as a reminder that a single act of uncontrolled aggression can ripple outward for years, financially, professionally, and personally. Lauryn Hill, 50 years old. In 2012, federal prosecutors charged Lauryn Hill with failing to file federal income tax returns for the years 2005 through 2007. According to court documents, Hill earned approximately $1.8 million during that period, but did not submit required filings. The case did not allege hidden offshore accounts or elaborate financial schemes. It centered on non-compliance with tax law. Hill addressed the court directly, stating that she had withdrawn from mainstream industry structures and believed she was being unfairly targeted. However, the legal obligation to file returns remained unchanged. In May 2013, she pled guilty to 3 misdemeanor counts of failing to file tax returns. In July 2013, a federal judge sentenced her to 3 months in prison, followed by 3 months of home confinement and 9 months of supervised release. She served her sentence at a federal facility in Connecticut and was released later that year. How does someone who commands global stages end up answering to tax code violations? During sentencing, the court emphasized that personal philosophy does not exempt an individual from federal law. Prosecutors acknowledged that Hill eventually made efforts to pay back taxes owed before sentencing, but the failure to file remained a criminal offense. Unlike high-profile fraud cases involving victims, this matter was procedural yet serious. The IRS treats failure to file as a violation of civic responsibility. Hill's prison term was relatively short compared to other federal sentences, but the conviction carried symbolic weight. After her release, she returned to touring and recording, though fans have often noted her complex relationship with the industry and the pressures surrounding fame. The legal chapter was finite. The public debate about artistic independence and financial obligation continues. 3 months in federal custody, a case rooted not in scandal but in statutory requirement. In the end, the law proved indifferent to artistry. Sophia Loren, 91 years old. In 1982, Sophia Loren, already one of the most celebrated figures in international cinema, entered an Italian prison, not for violence or scandal, but for a tax dispute that dated back more than a decade. The case stemmed from disagreements with Italian authorities over income calculations from the 1970s. Prosecutors alleged she had underpaid taxes during that period. The legal battle stretched across years of appeals and technical arguments about residency earnings and accounting practices. By the time a final ruling was handed down, Loren faced a 30-day sentence. In May 1982, she reported to the women's prison in Caserta near Naples and ultimately served 17 days before being released for good behavior. Why would an internationally adored icon return to serve time rather than remain abroad? At the time, Loren had the option of staying outside Italy. Instead, she chose to comply with the court's ruling and resolve the matter directly. Crowds gathered outside the prison walls, bringing flowers and singing in solidarity, a surreal contrast between incarceration and admiration. Guards later described her as polite and reserved, maintaining composure despite the unusual circumstances. The case did not involve hidden accounts or secretive financial schemes, as often portrayed in later celebrity tax scandals. It revolved around legal interpretation and disputed assessments. Still, the conviction stood and the sentence was served. For many observers, Loren's brief imprisonment became a testament to accountability rather than disgrace. She did not retreat into silence. She did not attack the court publicly. She completed the sentence and moved forward. 17 days behind bars did not diminish her cultural stature, but they did underscore a simple truth: prestige does not exempt anyone from legal obligations. Teresa Giudice, 53 years old. In 2013, Teresa Giudice and her husband were indicted on multiple federal charges, including mail fraud, wire fraud, and bankruptcy fraud. Prosecutors alleged that the couple submitted false loan applications, exaggerated income figures, and concealed assets during bankruptcy proceedings to maintain an affluent lifestyle while deeply in debt. Court filings detailed falsified W-2 forms, inflated earnings claims, and undisclosed property interests. In March 2014, Giudice pled guilty to 4 counts of fraud. Later that year, a federal judge sentenced her to 15 months in prison, ordering that she and her husband serve their sentences consecutively to minimize disruption to their children. In January 2015, Giudice reported to a federal correctional institution in Danbury, Connecticut. She ultimately served 11 months before being released in December 2015. During incarceration, she reportedly worked in the prison kitchen, earning minimal hourly wages, a stark contrast to the televised luxury that once defined her image. How does a life built on public displays of wealth unravel in federal court? The judge emphasized personal responsibility, noting that bankruptcy law requires full financial disclosure. Unlike impulsive crimes, this case centered on documentation paperwork and prolonged misrepresentation. After her release, Giudice returned to television, incorporating her prison experience into her narrative. However, the consequences extended beyond her own sentence. Her husband later served his term and was subsequently deported to Italy, permanently altering their family dynamic. The prison term ended. The legal record remains. In Giudice's case, federal fraud charges dismantled a carefully curated reality, replacing designer labels with inmate identification numbers and televised drama with judicial accountability. 15 women, 15 convictions, 15 reminders that fame can elevate a life, but it can't erase accountability. Some served weeks, others served years. A few may never walk free again. Yet the debate remains complicated. Were some of these cases driven by pressure, ego desperation, or calculated choice? And when prison time is served, should the public allow redemption? Or does certain behavior permanently redefine a legacy? Now we want to hear from you. Which case shocked you the most? And do you believe the punishment truly fit the crime? Was justice balanced, or did celebrity status influence the outcome either way? Drop your thoughts in the comments and tell us which story you want us to investigate next. Stay with Legends of Black Fame for deeper documented breakdowns that go beyond headlines, and make sure you're subscribed so you never miss the next reveal.